Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about the buttons that you see that are default on a Nintex form. So when you're on a SharePoint list and you click on the Nintex Forms button, you'll predominantly be presented with a save and a cancel button. Now if you open up one of these buttons, you'll actually see for the button action, you have an option of save and submit and just a plain save. Now I had a few questions as to what is the difference between those two things. Well, really, out of the box for a list form, it actually is the same thing, right? There's no real difference there. But when you're dealing with a task form, so if you have a workflow, like a Nintex workflow that is assigning a task to a user, and they use a Nintex form for the task form, then what you could actually do is have a save and also a save and submit button. The save button will actually save the task form, but will not get the workflow to continue on, right? It'll sit there and wait until the actual task has been submitted. Whereas the save and submit will actually submit the form and then will cause the workflow to continue on and actually process that task. Now, where this actually becomes pretty handy is if you are doing just a list form, just an out-of-the-box list form, you can actually add yourself another button and you can make it a save and submit button. So for example, you could do something like this and just have your save and submit button on the right. Now, in order to utilize this so that a workflow can act a little bit differently, what you first need to do is create yourself an extra field. In this case, I've actually called it submitted. And what that is a number field with a default value of 0. Right? That's all that is. Now, when you save the form, because I don't have the actual submitted field or a control that's linked to that field over here, every time you save this form, it will simply save it and leave that submitted field as 0. What you do with the save and submit button is you open this up, you click on the advanced, and the first thing you do is you change the connected to property to submitted, right? So that's going to be connected to that submitted field, that number field. You also want to change this value returned to set it to 1. So basically when you click on this save and submit, it will save the form. It will also update the submitted field and set its value to 1. And I've also set the data type return to be integer also. That's that part done for the form. Then what you do is you go into the workflow. So you create yourself a really simple workflow. And in the workflow settings, you basically need to configure when you want the workflow to start. So for both created and modified, I set it to conditional. And for the conditions, I set it to look at the submitted field and it's equal to 1. So this workflow, if somebody creates an item, if they fill in a form and it's save and submitted, it will set that field to 1 and this workflow will actually kick off and run. If on the other hand, they just click on the save button, submitted will equal to 0, so this workflow will not start. Then when they come back to that item and edit it, now it's called a modification event. So on that particular case, we're looking at this start when items are modified, and again, we want to look at a conditional start sequence, and again the same thing, submitted is equals to 1. So that means that now you can actually allow people to start filling in a form and not have to submit it, but they can just save it and come back to it later. So now this is a browser-based version of I guess filling in a form. So if you're looking at like a leave request type form or an expense claim form, now you can actually start filling that form in the browser and come back to it later and make more modifications until you're finally happy with it. Finally click on the save and submit, and the workflow will kick off. So let's see how this works in this scenario. So I'll go back to our list, and you'll see I'm going to create myself an item called test1, and I'll just click on save. You see submitted is equal to 0. Here's my workflow. It's called only start on submitted workflow. It hasn't kicked off. If I create a new item and say test2, but this time I click on the save and submit, you'll see the workflow ran. Again, if I create another one called test3 and save it, no workflow has started, but if I go back into it and edit it and say, yep, everything looks good, I now want to submit it, you can see the workflow kicked off. So there you go. Hopefully this will help some of you guys out who are looking at building some forms that people can actually partially fill in and then come back to them later. If you have any questions, or if you have any comments, or maybe you have a better way of doing this, feel free to add comments to the end of this blog post. Thanks very much.